Hey guys, just wanted to do my finally spoiler review of Avengers Infinity War, the 19th film in the MCU, the third Avengers movie. And it's a huge a culmination of everything that's been happening up to this point in the franchise. Basically, so I gotta say this right off the bat. This is probably one among my top five favorite Marvel movies. Best Avengers movie, and I'll say this: Thanos had like, I mean, obviously because of sporadic screen time that Thanos got in other movies, they had to do. There has been a great deal of time giving him pathos and characterization to the point where he was basically the central character. They could have called this like Thanos Infinity War, but. And I gotta say, like, he definitely was probably the best Marvel villain in the franchise, and gave even more so than Loki and Killmonger, even though those two are my favorites. I mean, it was something about like um, Josh Brolin's performance, in which basically his backstory is that he's from Titan, a moon outside of Saturn. He um, his planet was suffering from overpopulation and exhausting their resources, and there weren't enough resources to accommodate the population because of overpopulation. And he's the one who suggested that half the population need to be wiped out in order for the whole planet to sustain itself. He was, of course, ostracized for it, and nobody listened to him. And then, of course, the entire planet ended up, dying of starvation. And that he decides to seek out the Infinity Gauntlets and the power of the Infinity Stones to be able to wipe out half the universe in order to provide perfect balance and because he feels that that's the only way to keep the rest of the universe from suffering the same fate. And there's something about like Josh Brolin's performance where it's like he honestly believes that he is doing the right thing. I mean, what he's doing is insane, but you can tell that this is a guy who's convinced in his mind he really is the hero of his own story, and and I mean, I know like filmmakers and creators say that a lot about their villains, but this is the first time where I felt like it's one of the few times where like they really showed instead of just telling me that. And like there's nothing about him that came across as like like I said, what he was doing was insane, but what is his justifications for his actions? Like he wasn't just saying that just to hide the fact that he was just deep down like power hungry or vengeful. Like he really did see himself as a savior of the universe. So it was just kind of like these two opposing sides, the Avengers and the Guardians, and then Thanos. Like both of these sides are just trying to save their universe in their own way, in their own ways. Thanos is obviously the one that's in the more misguided attempt. He believes in, you know, you had to make sacrifices. You had to sacrifice lives to save other sacrifices have to be made to save other lives. And I guess it was summed up in a conversation between Vision and Steve Rogers, where he says we don't trade lives, and which is kind of the different ideologies that I guess you can say both sides have. It was cool that we got to see, Vision and Scarlet Witch. They've been like ever since the end of Civil War. They've been kind of like rendezvousing around the country, having these like romantic getaways. Trying to keep it from both sides, just because Captain America and his group of Avengers are fugitives, and I guess presumably his group of like secret Avengers have been going around the world taking on missions while being on the run. At least it's based on a tie-in comic. You still have Tony, Vision, and War Machine, like the only members of the Avengers left that are part of the Accords. But then of course they get attacked by I don't remember their name. Proxima Midnight was supposed to be one of them. They're basically like the Black Order, or the children of Thanos, but they're pretty much like one note henchmen. They don't get like really much characterization, and I guess figured given there are already so many characters, I guess it's better that they fall on the sword, so to speak, than the ones who come to know and love. Since and it was kind of this pretty badass moment when Captain America caught Proxima's spear when they're in the train fighting in the train station, and Falcon and Black Widow showing up and chasing them off. Um, and and then of course you have like Tony, and then of course you have Tony and Pepper, like they're engaged, but then because of I guess like what happened earlier on, I guess they end up being sought out by Doctor Strange and Bruce Banner because the movie because originally he was on the Asgardian refugee ship from the end of Thor Ragnarok, and the movie starts out with the whole the ship being under attack. It seems like all the Asgardians, or at least half the Asgardians, are dead, and we don't see what happened with Valkyrie or Korg. Um, although although the directors confirmed that she was still alive, she escaped, but you have like Thanos torturing Thor now that he has the Power Stone in it, which he got from Xandar and massacred that planet off screen, and to force Loki to hand over the Tesseract, and he breaks it down and puts the Space Stone in the slot in the Infinity Gauntlet, and Heimdall had actually used what power is left from the Bifrost to send Hulk to Earth after he tried to he started beating up Thanos, and he originally had the upper hand until Thanos actually beat Hulk. So Heimdall sent him to Earth in his last breath before he was killed. And then Loki, just carrying over from Thor Ragnarok, in which, in spite of his backstabbing and his resentment towards his brother, you can tell he still loved. You can tell he still cared about us. He still cared about him in the end, especially when he declared himself as Loki, Odin's son, not Laufey's son, and not and Prince of Asgard, and not saying he was affiliated with Jotunheim like he did in Thor: The Dark World. And then he tries to stab Thanos, but then of course Thanos puts a chokehold on him, and he does have this great last line saying "you will never be a god" before Thanos snaps his neck. And Thor is restrained and basically helpless to watch. And then of course Thanos and the Black Order leave and blow up the ship, in which Thor lands on the Guardian ship, the Milano. They find him, and they kind of have this funny. They have funny moments where Chris Hemsworth, we have Star-Lord jealous of Thor because everybody's admiring his physique, and then Thor splitting up with Groot and Rocket Raccoon to go back to, I guess, that dying star from where his original hammer was formed, and also from where the Infinity Gauntlet was formed for Thanos. And he runs into this, and he meets up with this 100-foot dwarf, who's actually played by Peter Dinklage, and he's basically supposed to help him forge a new weapon called the Stormbreaker, which is supposed to made specifically to has similar properties to his hammer, but it can also open a Bifrost, and it's supposed to be made specifically to kill Thanos. And I guess I can say he's a secondary. I guess the Russo brothers said that Thor's one of the bigger characters in the movie just because of the fact that he's lost everything. Granted, Rocket Raccoon gets him a new cybernetic eye, and he gets a new hammer, but it's he's lost his entire family, his home world. He's among the last of his kind, and you can tell when he's spilling his guts out to Rocket that he's still trying to hold back tears, but he says he wants to channel his energy into trying to forge his new weapon. And you have I guess you have and the teams are kind of split up. You have those guys by the Dying Star trying to forge the new weapon. You have Tony, Doctor Strange, and Spider-Man when trying to rescue Doctor Strange after he got abducted by I don't know, I guess who Tony nicknamed Squidward in in one of Thanos' Q ships, that they ended up traveling to Titan because Tony says, you know what, let's just take the fight to Thanos because he doesn't want to suffer, because he's still like, he doesn't want to worry about another invasion at Thanos' behest, just like in the Battle of New York. So then they end up rendezvousing with the rest of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then they have the rest of the Avengers that are still on Earth, rendezvousing. And first, the new Avengers, the Avengers based from the end of Age of Ultron, with basically Bruce Banner and War Machine, and they're discussing a plan about, because of Thanos is coming, they decided they need to remove the Infinity Stone, and they decided to go to Wakanda, the Mind Gem, and they decided to go to Wakanda in order to find a way to remove it without killing Vision. And I think that was like the most shocking. Some of the most shocking moments is that they try, the other Guardians, they try to get the Reality Stone from the Collector, played by Benicio del Toro, but he's already there. He wrecked the place. He's got the Reality Stone, and he's able to use it and he successfully kidnaps Gamora, and by torturing Nebula, he forces Gamora to reveal where the Soul Stone is, and it's on, I don't remember the name of the planet, but it's surprisingly, but the guardian of the Soul Stone is none other than Red Skull. I know a bunch of people figured just assumed he was presumed dead just because the Tesseract sent him in through that wormhole, or like he thought, maybe he just disintegrated. I never thought he was dead. I just thought it was a matter of, Hugo Weaving not wanting to reprise the role because he felt like he was being typecast as like villains in blockbusters, which I don't think is the worst thing to be typecast as, but I don't know. I guess it's an acting thing. But he was. I actually had to look this up. He was actually being played by, I think it was Ross McCant. I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering the name. He's on Walking Dead. So he apparently he's taken on the role of Red Skull, and he's been forced to be acted as a guardian for the Soul Stone for all these years as his punishment for trying to use the Tesseract for selfish reasons. And he says that Thanos needs a soul for his soul, and he needs to sacrifice somebody he cares about in order to be worthy of the Soul Stone. And Gamora says like, "Oh, you don't care about anybody," so she thinks she has the outs. But then you like see Thanos' face, and he's just like completely tearing up, and Gamora's horrified when she realizes that he really did care for her, but that's not enough. That doesn't stop her from grabbing her and just throwing her off a cliff and saying that this isn't. And her last words being, "No, this isn't love." And Thanos gets the Soul Stone. He travels to Titan to fight with Tony. Tony's team, and they actually do a fairly good job of fighting him off, and they actually manage to restrain him. But then when and even with the help, even have Nebula, who got free, coming to their aid. But then when Star-Lord learns of Gamora's death, he's the one who starts beating on Thanos. That he's able to fight off. That he's able to. It allows him to basically break free from being restrained by the other heroes, and basically stab Tony, in which Doctor Strange hands over the Time Stone. And Tony asks, why would he do that? He said it was the only way, because he was using the Time Stone to see 14 million, at least over 14 million different possible futures, as a way to beat Thanos. And he says that out of one of those 14 million was the only one where they successfully won. But then you also have the Black Order, who's invading Wakanda, trying to get to the Mind Stone. And they have this epic battle in which it's the armies of Wakanda. You have M'Baku, Okoye. You got to see Shuri again working to remove the Time Stone from Vision without killing him. And you know you have a Captain America and the Secret Avengers, and they're all fighting off the Black Order's army. And then of course they have this cool like badass moment where after Thor finishes his hammer, that Groot, Rocket Raccoon, and he all show up with the Bifrost and turns the tables, and that was like one of the moments where it's like everybody was like cheering. And also I love this moment where Bucky, who has a Zoom metal arm, picks up Rocket Raccoon. They're spinning around shooting his gun, you know, and unlike Thor and Captain America, who are like, always like stopping in the middle of the battle, like, questioning each other's, make a comment about each other's like new looks since the last time they saw each other. Bucky doesn't seem to question the fact that there's a gun-toting raccoon shooting at aliens. I'm just spinning around, and he just kind of goes with it. And of course, Rocket in true fashion is like, how much is the gun? Bucky, not for sale. Okay, how much is the arm? And Bucky ignores him, and Rocket's just like, I'm still getting that arm, which, he's got a thing for just like, stealing other people's like body parts just in this movie and Last Guardians movie. And they're able to kind of fight back the armies, but then it's when Thanos shows up that Scarlet Witch is forced to kill Vision and says like they're out of time. And this is a really heartbreaking moment between them where Vision says that, you can never hurt me, I'll always love you. And, Elizabeth Olsen's really giving this great performance. She's like naturally just completely just breaking down, and she finally just, just removes the stone and kills Vision. But then you think for a split second you think they're out of the woods, but then you remember it's like, oh wait, Thanos has a time stone. He's just gonna reverse this and just rip the Mind Stone out of Vision's head, which is exactly what he does. So what Scarlet Witch did was in vain, and Thor comes in and just stabs Thanos with the back end of Stormbreaker, and Thanos saying it's like, you should have gone for the head, and then of course he does the finger snap, and there's this flash of light, and he goes into the afterlife where he sees Gamora as a child, saying, did you do it? She said yes. What did it cost you? Everything. And then I guess they're both like, she's tearing up, and then he's actually starting to question like whether everything he did was actually worth it. But then you go to like a different locate, like, on Titan and Earth, and basically with the exceptions of the five out of the 6 original Avengers, Hawkeye and Ant-Man weren't in it because they were under house arrest with their families. Everybody, Black Panther. Then you have Okoye, Nebula, Rocket. They're the only ones that don't start like turning to ash almost immediately. And think Spider-Man was probably the one that was the most heartbreaking because he was the one who was like begging, Tony, like, I don't want to go, I don't want to die, I'm sorry. And I think this is probably I can only imagine like how traumatic this was for Tony, because like this is basically his worst fears come to realize, like all of his friends and allies dying from another alien threat. And then of course, mentioning in Spider-Man Homecoming, if anything happens to him, that if anything happened to Peter Parker, that he felt like it was going to be on him, he didn't want that on his conscience, and that's exactly what happened. And the movie ends with basically watching the sunset, and then just cuts to black, and it's just regular. It's not even like the colorful or like animated, closing credits. It's just basically just normal Times New Roman closing credits, and even like the title card, Avengers Infinity War, that turns to ash too, and it's like I feel like everybody in the audience was so shook by it, and this is probably the first time in years I think I've ever seen somebody, like the entire audience, sit through till the post-credit scene. Like most other Marvel movies, people would have already started getting up and leaving after the mid-credit scene, but there's only one post-credit scene, and that's when with Maria Hill and Nick Fury just driving through New York, and like people are disappearing. Helicopter crashes because the pilots are gone. They crash into an SUV because nobody's in the vehicle, and then Maria starts to fade out. It gets erased from existence before Nick Fury, before he gets the utter out motherfucker and sending out a signal through some kind of like high tech pager that it has the insignia for Captain Marvel. So I gotta say, this was definitely a bold movie. This is the one where it felt like it had to go dark, and I appreciate it for going kind of dark, but still having enough humor in it to balance it out for the most part. But I mean, I'll give it this. There were times they get like DCEU levels depressing at times, but because you already kind of felt like, okay, this is the most hell that the heroes have ever been through, and they've already established like Thanos' threat level. They kind of wonder with the ending with this, it's just hard to get invested in Ant-Man and the Wasp and Captain Marvel, because they're obviously going to take place before the events of this movie. So it's like, regardless of whoever big bad they're fighting, it's like, is it going to, they're going to matter? Because it's like because in the post credit scenes, they're basically going to be, the end of this movie from their perspective. And even though part 4, the Russo brothers says that, I guess it's supposed to, I don't know like how they're going to do it, but I think most of the people are going to be resurrected because obviously, they're going to be another sequels to Spider-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Black Panther. My theory is that anybody who died prior to the snap is going to be permanent, and anybody who died as a result of the snap will be resurrected. I could be wrong. Captain America could die too, because Chris Evans says that Avengers 4 would be his last MCU film. I don't know if or how the time still going to factor into it. If this movie's going to be like it's Days of, going to be the MCU's equivalent of Days of Future Past. What kind of how it's going to reboot? How it's going to do like a soft reboot of the franchise, of the whole franchise. How it's going, if and how, if it's going to integrate like Fantastic Four and X-Men. Who's going to die? Who's going to stay dead? I mean, there are like a lot of possibilities and a lot of speculation, and it's like, and again, it's also Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had to deal with their own alien invasion and try to prevent another apocalyptic future. So does that mean the timeline they traveled to was a result of Thanos winning? Was it are we supposed to presume it's part of some like alternate timeline, assuming that's a result of the Avengers already rewriting history, rewriting the outcome of Infinity War? I mean, who knows? So, I mean, that's what makes such a bold ending. It was make people so shocking. It's like, where do you go from there? Where do you go from here? But anyway, that's my thoughts. I know it's late, but I just want to say, great movie. I'm glad I got to see it. I'm going to go see it again this weekend with a friend. But anyway, guys, what were your favorite parts of Infinity War? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like this video, like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.